Hello and welcome to Friday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and on screen we have the follow-up to one of my favourite puzzles of recent times. A few weeks ago I did a puzzle which I described as a Sudoku of sublime genius, I think, and it was by Matyas Martinka, and he has created a follow-up puzzle which has just come out on Logic Masters Germany, and he describes this one as hard. Now, the first one was quite hard, so I think this could be a very long video, but I just have to try this puzzle. I enjoyed the first one so much that I want to have a go at it. I don't have anything else to tell you about today, apart from, Thermo Sudoku's out, so do check it out if you haven't checked it out already. And with that, let's read the rules. So, normal Sudoku rules apply. Each cell in the grid should be coloured blue for water or green for land. For cells containing arrows, the digit in that cell shows how many cells share the same colour with the cell in the given direction, not including the arrow cell itself. Note that these same colour cells need not be connected to the arrow cell. Not all arrows are given. The water occupies a single orthogonally connected region of the grid, but no 2x2 area can contain only water cells. An island is an orthogonally connected region of at least 3 land cells, and all land cells must be part of islands. So land cells are always in groups of 3 or more orthogonally connected cells. Islands may touch each other diagonally, and land cells forming any island must contain different digits. What a rule set that is. I mean, that is completely bananas. Some of you, I know, don't like complicated rules. I don't mind them, I have to say. For me, it's a trade-off. If you have a puzzle with a horrible rule set, and the puzzle itself is inelegant as a result, and the solve is not satisfying, that doesn't work at all. But where you have a complicated rule set, but the actual solve is gorgeous as a result of that rule set, happy days. I'm very comfortable with that. So my big recommendation, I suppose, is to make sure you're comfortable with that rule set before you try this puzzle. I have it indeed. I spent a few minutes looking over the video that I made of Matyas's first puzzle just to try and remind myself of some of the logical techniques that I'm likely to need for this one. Now with that, do try it out. Have a click on the link under the video to play it. And with that, let's get cracking. And I mean, you just have to admire this sort of construction straight off the bat. It's just a grid full of arrows. This is going to resolve into a unique Sudoku puzzle. It's just magnificent. And I have no clue how to start it. Let's put in, like that one, that arrow could only be a 1, 2 or a 3 because whatever its parity is, it's only got 3 cells to the right of it. That's the same, look. That's the same. That's the same. That's the same. In fact, if we have a look along this row of the grid, we've got arrows pointing downwards here that can't be bigger than 5 because they've only got 5 cells underneath them. So there's actually a quintuple in the grid straight away, look. So those squares have got to be 6, 7, 8 or 9, which is completely useless but interesting all the same. One thing I remember from the first solve is that where you have, in fact there's a great deal of arrows spanning the grid here. Look at these. Yeah, there's loads of them. So let's just take one of these examples. I'll take this one. And let's have a think about whether it's possible for those two arrows to have the same parity. Could they both be land or both be water? And this is a fascinating bit of logic here, but they can't be. And the reason is that let's think about what the number would be in this cell. The number in this cell will be the count of the purple cells in that string of 7 yellow cells plus 1, because this cell is obviously purple. But the count in this cell is going to be the sum of those same 7 cells plus 1, because this cell is purple. In other words, if these have the same parity, they also must contain the same digit, which is not allowed. So whenever you have this sort of perimeter arrangement of arrows, these must be different. One of them must be land, one of them must be water. Oh, now we can go further than that. I remembered something else, because we know they're different parity, and therefore let's focus on this one just for the sake of exposition. What is the number in this one? This is going to be the number of purple squares in this 7-cell region. This one's blue, so that's obviously not going to count in that total. So it's going to be the number of purples in these 7 squares. What's the blue count going to be? Well, this square isn't blue, so this is going to count the number of blue squares in this 7-cell region, which means that those 2 squares are basically they're sharing those 7 yellow cells. In other words, they have to add up to 7. Now, can we use any of this, my phone's buzzing at me, to make deductions? Must actually delete those because that's going to confuse me otherwise. Well, actually, one thing we can think about is that you can never have a 9 on an arrow cell. And in fact, if the arrows are pointing at one another, you can't have an 8 either. Let me just highlight all of these cells again and have another stare. Let me just have a look at this. Those 2 as well. So there's no 9s and no 8s in these cells. There's no 9s ever in an arrow cell. Now that is interesting, isn't it? Because that means if we look across the grid here, if we look, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This, yeah, look. Where can the 9s go in rows 1, 2, 4, 6, and 9? Well, they can only go, actually, I'm just going to colour those in. So they can go in any of these squares, any of those squares, any of those, not that one actually, any of those squares, any of these 3 squares. Now, let's just take a stare at that for a moment, because it looks very pretty, but I think, so in these rows of the grid, the 9s are locked into 5 different columns. So in these 5 rows of the grid, the 9s are in 5 different columns. Therefore, there can't be any more 9s in those columns of the grid. If we were to try and put a 9 here, for example, that would be a 6th 9 in those 5 columns. That does not work. So, in fact, I'm being a bit silly here. I can do this. The effect of this pattern. The effect of this pattern is to lock 9s out of. I'm getting overblown with yellows. I'm going to have to just switch the colours just to show you. Let's make those blue. Now, the effect of this pattern is to rule 9s out of all of these cells. You can't have a 9 in any of those cells, because if there is, there's a 6th 9 in those 5 columns, and that's not going to work. But the effect of this is actually, had I not thought about reading and actually looked at columns, I didn't need to do any of this logic, so apologies, because if we look at the columns, look, in column 1, 2, 8 and 9, where can the 9s go? The 9s can only go in these positions. So we know that these columns will have to have, there are 4 columns there, so they've got to have 4 9s in them. We know that the 4 9s must occupy the yellow squares, and there are exactly 4 rows involved, so there must be 1 9 in each of those rows. So there's got to be 1 9 in row 3 in the yellow squares, 1 9 in row 5 in the yellow squares, the same in row 7, the same in row 8. And that means that square is a 9. And let me just hone it. Because we know there's a 9 in one of these 3 and the 9 in one of these 3, we haven't yet put a 9 along row 9 of the grid, so it must be in one of those 3 squares, and it can't be on an arrow. So that's a 9 straight off the bat. That is very cool, and probably, thinking about it, not helpful, but it's very nice indeed. Just wondering about I'm just sorry, I'm not being articulate at all. I'm actually wondering about 8s now, because loads of these squares can't be 8. Loads of them can't be 8. No, I don't know, that's confusing me. Right, let's get rid of all the highlighting and come back to the puzzle and just have another stare at it. So we've locked a 9 in. We know there's a 9 in one of those 2 squares now. Oh, hang on, look, this row is interesting, because that's got 2 lots of arrows. It's got the outer arrows, which have got to sum to 7 and be different parity, and it's got inner arrows as well. Let's just have a stare at this. So if that's, I don't obviously know which ones of these are land and which of these are water, so I'm just going to label them with neutral colours while I think about this. So these add up to 7. So if these are different parity, if we reverse the parity there and stare at that, does that work or not? Sorry about this. This is where No, it doesn't work. That does not work, because no, it doesn't work. Sorry, I was trying to compare the numbers I was putting in those 2 squares. The way to think about this is the 2 red squares. What number is in the 2 red squares? Well, this square will be the count of the red squares in that 5-cell region plus 1. But this will be the sum of the red squares in that same 5-cell region plus 1. So this is not valid. You can't do that. That does not work. So let's make that purple and have a look at that. Does that work? Oh, I don't think this works either, does it? It's a similar reason. If I compare, you have to sort of compare it offset. But if you compare that one with that one, don't they have to have the same count? Because they both count the number of purples in the yellow region. And in this one's case, it will be +2 because it sees 2 purples there. But this one will count the number of purples in the yellow region plus those 2, so it will have the same number. So this doesn't work. And no, that's beautiful, because now that doesn't work by symmetry, because those 2 would have the same count. So something's got to work. What was it's going to work? So it must be 2 the same here. That must be purple. This must be red. Now, does that work? If this doesn't work, I've made a logical boo-boo, and sorry. We've got. Oh no, this is beautiful now. This does work, because now this is counting the sum of purple squares in the yellow region. Obviously these 2 are not purple, they're not included. This is counting the number of reds in the yellow region. So these 2 squares have to share 5. They are adding to 5. So these add to 7, these add to 5. And they can't be 2 and 3. They can't be 2 and 3, because if this is 2 and 3, that's a 1. And if that's a 1, you can't make those add to 7. Good grief. So I think this has to be 1 4. That's not 1. And these have to add to 7. They can't be 1 6 and 3 4 now. They have to be 2 5. That has to be a 3. That's not a 3. Oh my goodness me. Now this 3 means those 3 squares are the same colour as that one. So we don't know whether this is land or water yet. What a start, this puzzle. Now hang on, because one thing to remember here is it's not possible for this, say, to be a 5 and that to be a 1. That's never going to work, because these have to be 1 apart, because this is seeing 1 extra purple square to this one. So this is either 5 4 or it's 2 1, and this is either 5 4 or 2 1. Oh, that's actually very helpful, because that can't be 5. If that's 5 4, those 2 squares have to be 1 2 and 3, and now look, in that row I've got 4 different cells that have to be the numbers 1 2 and 3. So that clearly is not right. This I think has to be a 2. That's a 1. That's a 5. That's a 4. This square's got to be 4 or 5. Sorry, not 4 or 5. These 2 can't be 1 or 2. There's a 1 2 3 triple. Yes, so we move 3 from those 2 squares. And okay. Wow. That's so much great stuff, but I'm stuck. What am I meant to do with it? I don't even know whether this is land or sea yet. The 4 5 pair here. So one of these is a 5 and will extend right the way down. But the other one doesn't even have to have the same parity. Those 2 now, and these 2 I suppose, can't be 2 5. We know they sum to 7, and neither can be 2 5 anymore. I don't mind this though. I don't mind being stuck on a puzzle like this because it's so interesting. You're discovering new logic all the time, and I don't mind being stuck providing I can get unstuck. Let me put it like that. There's a 3 in one of those two squares. Oh, come on. Am I meant to think about the 8s? Is that what I'm meant to... Yeah, okay. There is a thought. There is a thought. Now look, if we look at those 3 squares, these two can't be an 8. So if the 8s were in the same positions in column 1, 2, column 8, 9 as the 9s were, so let's say that the 8s could only occupy these cells. I'll make those yellow just to show you. So let's imagine that in column 1, 2, 8, 9, the 8s have to be in the yellow cells. Is that a problem or not? Well, it clearly is a problem. It's a problem down here because it's going to force an 8 into one of these 3 cells, and that's not valid. We can't put an 8 here because these cells add to 7. Now, if that, and we've proved it, if that's not true, then one of the arrow cells, at least one I suppose, one or more of the arrow cells in columns 1, 2, 8 and 9 must contain an 8. Now that is surely a well, not a problem, but that's going to be very challenging because these can't... I'm going to get rid of the highlighting again, sorry. These can't be 8s because we know they sum to 7. Ditto, well actually those can't be 8s either. None of those can be 8s. So that the 8s have to be found. Now that can't be an 8 because it's only got 7 cells to the right of it. Similarly that one. So that one might be able to be an 8. So that's possible. Let's highlight that in something, that colour. So that one might be an 8. Now the only other column that could have an 8 in it is this one. Oh, that one, can that be an 8? Maybe, yeah, maybe that one can be an 8. This one can't be, this one can't be, this one can't be, that one can't be. There's only 7 cells to the left of it. So there are only 2 cells in columns 1, 2, 8 and 9 that can be 8. And if this is an 8, it can't be green, because if it's green, all of those squares have to turn green, and this region, or this cell, is part of this region. So that now creates a 10-cell green region, which is impossible because we know that every cell in a green region has to contain a different digit. So if this is an 8, everything there is blue. So that would be green, that would be green. No! Look, that's a 1, 2 or a 3. This can't be an 8. If it's an 8, that breaks that clue, because that clue should have 5 in it, because that's how many squares of the same colour are beneath it. So this cannot be an 8. It just cannot be an 8. So let me get the colours back again. Those two are red. This is not an 8. Go away. This is not an 8. So this square is an 8, and it has to be an 8. Oh, and now for the same reason as that not being able to be green, that can't be green, because if it's green, this square would be green, and that creates a 10-cell green region. So in fact, this is C, or water, or whatever it's called. So that's water. This square's got to be a 5 because it sees all 5 cells beneath it. That's a 4. That square and that square have to be green because they are. We can't have a 2 by 2 region of water. That means we know that each land cell must be at least 3 large. So those are green. These two must be green. The parity, if this is green, that must be a different parity to the one on the others. So that marks green again because we must avoid a 2 by 2. I don't believe it. And we've got a 2-4 pair. A 2, or not two, yes, a 2 and a 4. These two have to add to 7. They can't be 2, 5 or 3, 4. They've got to be 1 and 6 now. In fact, we're going to know the order because if we put a 1 in here, it's broken because this is green. It's counting the number of green cells. That is a 6. That is a 1. Oh, now look, hang on a minute, because this... Yeah, this cell and this cell are opposite those two cells. So these add to 7. So those two squares are 3 and 5. Because they can't be 1, 2, 4 or 6. So these two squares are 2 and 4. That's not a 2, therefore. Oh, now look, these two. These can't be 2, 5 and 3, 4. So these are 1 and 6, and there's a 1 there. So that's a 6, that's a 1. That must be a 3. It can't be a 1 now because of this. So now this means these are all the same colour. Now, do I know what colour that is? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, wait a minute, though. If this is blue, this must be green. These two are green. These two are all the same. These three are all the same colour. Oh yeah, I can do it because this is green, so that's blue. They can't be the same, so the parity gets us out of trouble. Now this must be green, therefore. And in fact, this 1 is that square. So all of those squares must be blue. So that works with that one as well, obviously. I mean, how good is this puzzle? It is lost for words with puzzles like this. This is just stunning. Now, what on earth am I meant to do now? I haven't got a Scooby-Doo. What is it I'm meant to be seeing here, guys? Sorry, I'm so sorry. I know it must be very frustrating if you're spotting what I'm meant to be seeing and you've spotted it ages ago and you're just watching me sort of flounder. 2, 3. Oh dear. So we've got 1, 6 here and 1, 6 here. So these squares can't be you can see they're opposite each other. So these have to add to 7 without using 1 and 6. So they're 2, 5 and 3, 4 in some order. Now that's... I was about to say that's a little bit interesting, but I'm not actually sure it is. Oh, good grief. What am I meant to be seeing here? This square, that could only be 1, 2... 1. Well, actually, as these are not the same parity, this can't be a 5 and it can't be a 3. So that square has to be a 1, 2 or a 4. And these two squares have got to sum up to 7 without using 1, 6. So these squares are 2, 3, 4, 5 in some order. So there's actually, look, there's a quintuple in column 6 there. I'm not exactly sure how to use that. Oh, I tell you what, I can fill that square in. That's a 7, because that's just an arrow pointing down the C there. This square, not sure. These two, now hang on. Look, these two arrows, these two arrows can't be C, because if they are, that's a 2 by 2 C region. Oh, there's something here, because if these are both green, on the other hand, let's just look at that for a second. If these are both green, this one would have to be 1 greater than this one. But look, there's a 4 and a 6 that see these two squares. So, yeah, and this can't be 8, 7. If this was 8, 7, this glue is broken because the whole column it's broken for loads of reasons. The whole column turns green, it creates an 11 cell region and it breaks that glue. So 8, 7 is nonsense there. So what is in these two squares if they are both green? It can't include an 8, 7, it can't include a 6, it can't include a 5 because 5 would have to be next to a 4, it can't include a 4, so it has to be, it can't be 1, 2 because there would be 3, 1, 2, so it's got to be a 3, 2 pair. And that doesn't work. Let me show you why. This square's got to poke out because that square is green and it needs a friend. We know it's got to be part of a 3-cell region. So now if this is a 2, 3, this square has to be blue because it's already seeing 2 greens, which means that this column has to be made up. Well, this is going to be a 3. Sorry, let me just show you. That's going to be a 3 there. This column has a 3 and a 1 clue that have to somehow get to 9. So this square is saying that we're seeing 4 green cells in this column, maximum. There can only be, in fact there are exactly 4 green cells in this column. Now this is saying that there's 1 blue below this plus this, well that's 2 blues. This could be a blue as well. So there is a maximum of 3 blues in the column. Now 3 plus 4 is not 9. So this just does not work. This just does not work. And that green needs to stay. This 2, 3 is wrong for certain. Well, no, actually not for certain. But definitely it is not true to say that this is a 2, 3. They are not both green. One of these is green and one of these is blue. And that means Yes, it does. It means they add to 7. It does. Well, yes, it does. It does mean they add to 7, because if this is one parity and this is the other parity, what is the count for this square? This square is purple, so this square doesn't count in its count. So it's counting how many purples there are in those 7 squares. This red square only sees those 7 squares. It's counting how many reds are in those 7 squares. So these two have to share the total of that 7 squares. They have to add to 7. And they can't be 1, 6, they can't be 3, 4. These are 2 and 5. Oh, this is just unbelievable. This is a 1. So it's blue. We've already looked at that, but in a different way. This has to be a 4. Oh my goodness. So that's a 3. That's a 5. That's a 2. Surely this is going to blow the puzzle open, is it? 2, 5. Surely? Please? What? I must be... Oh, actually, that gives me that one. And I just noticed, look, I've got a 1, 4, 5 triple in this box, 1, 4, 5 triple in this box. So those squares, that can't be a 2, but this must be 1, 4 or 5. These have to be a 1, 4, 5 triple because of the 1, 4, 5s here, and here. Oh, come on, Simon. Must be a 5 in one of those 2 squares. And there must be a 4 in one of those 3 squares. And oh dear. I'm stuck, well and truly stuck. Come on, let's see what we can do. There must be a way of making a bit more progress here. What is that way? Oh, that square's got to be green. Oh, in fact, that one, I was forgetting the 2 by 2 rule. That might help. This square, look. That can't be a 3 anymore because we know that there are 2 cells of unequal parity there. So that's got, oh goodness me, that's got to be a 1 or a 2 now. Oh, and there's some nice logic. Nice logic, because let's look at this square. Can this square be a 1 or a 2? And it can't be, because if it's a 1 or a 2, it forces these 3 squares to be the numbers 1, 2 and 4, which ordinarily would be fine, but that leaves no way to make those squares add up to 7. So you cannot put anything in this square that makes these a 1, 2, 4 triple. Therefore, that square is a 3. Therefore, it's blue. It's blue and it's the same colour. We get all of those filled in. That must be green now to avoid a 2 by 2. That... Oh, yes. Yes, now this 3 means you can't make a 3, 4 pair add to 7 in the perimeter. This becomes a 2, 5 pair. This is a 1. 2, 5 here. So that one must be a 3, 4. This must be a 3, 4. This 1 fixes that this is a 4. That fixes a 1, 5 pair here. That's a little bit interesting as well. Look at this for clue. This for clue implies that, yeah, whatever parity this one is, it has to turn those 3 squares to its parity. So those 3 squares all have to be the same parity. Let's keep a record of that. How long have I had? 40 minutes. Good grief. That's flown by as well. I don't feel I've been going at all. Now, oh, you know what? That square's restricted because that sees a 2, 5 in the row and a 3 in the box. So if that is not 4, no, it must be 4. It must be 4 because otherwise it has no value apart from 9. That's just a 4. That's a 3. That's a 4. Okay, well that's... feels like good progress, but it's not enough, is it? There must be a 3 in one of those 2 squares. Maybe we should just do some Sudoku for a while and see if that takes us forward. Oh yeah, that gives us 4 there straight away. 3, can we get a 3? Must be a 3 in one of those 2 squares, I think. 5s we've locked in down here. 5 up here must be in one of those squares, I think. Oh, and not in the top because we've got the 2, 5 pair coming across. 2, look, this 2 and this 2 force a 2 into one of those 2 positions. This 1 could still be either colour. I don't think we can disambiguate this. The 4s and the 3s don't work. Oh dear. No, come on. That square's interesting, isn't it? Because that, what can that be? That could be a 3, it can't be a 4. No, a 3 I wanted to put in there. 3. It can't be a 5 actually, and it can't be a 6, so it has to be a 3. That's just a 3. Bother, that makes that a 3. So now, looks like one of those 2 squares is a 3. So the 3s are sort of mirrored in those 2 boxes. And this is a green 3. I don't know. I can't quite see how that's going to resolve anything. But this square must be a bit restricted now because that can't be 1, 2, 3 or 5. Surely it can't be 7. So it's got to be 4, 6 or 7, but I don't think 7's going to work, is it? No, 7 doesn't work because if it's 7, this square being blue would force the whole column blue. And that doesn't work because now we know one of these 2 squares is blue and one of them is green, so that we couldn't make a 3-cell green region. So in fact this cannot be a 7. This has to be 4 or 6. Well, it can't, if it's 6 it can't be green, because if it's a green 6 all of these two squares, all of those 6 squares would have to turn green, and that creates 10, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cell green region. That is not allowed. So if this is 6, this has to be blue. Now, that also looks difficult to me. I'm just trying to see whether I think it... The reason I think it's difficult is if this is a blue... Let me just show you. If that's a blue 6, we've got to be really careful not to isolate this green cell. So this green, it would become a green domino, has got to come out. It's got to take a 3rd green cell, and that would have to be one of those two cells. It would have to be. So those would all turn blue. And isn't this going to... Surely this is going to break here, because now this green would turn all these green. This turns all green. That's a green because it's in a 2 by 2 region. And we get an 8 cell green region. An 8 cell green region would have to have only 1 digit missing from it. And this cannot have a 2 in it because of those 2s. And it cannot have a 4 in it, I don't think, because of the 4s. No, it can't. It definitely can't have either of those digits in it. So this just does not work. This does not work. I don't think this can be a blue 6 or a green 6. It has to be a 4. I'm sure there may be a more elegant way of proving that. It's probably a naked single or something I haven't spotted, but apologies if that... Oh, that 4 actually is nice. That's going to give me this, that 1, that 3 just by Sudoku. That 3 now. There must be a 1 in one of those 2 cells. That can't possibly be a 1. Can it? What? No, is the short answer. Let me just show you why. If this is a 1, it can't have the same parity as this square, because you can't reduce this total down to 1 by putting whatever you want in this square. You know, if this square is purple and that square is purple, this square would still have to be a 2 in that instance. So these would have to have different parity. And now what's the total for the column? Well, you'd have 5 purples and a maximum of 3 reds. If this was red, this is red, and 1 more red. Now 5 plus 3 is 8, not 9. So I think I'm right in saying that's got to be the 1. Unfortunately, 2 is going to work though, isn't it? Because the 1 degree of freedom gets taken away. But that 1, oh my goodness me, sorry. That's got to be a 1. That's got to be a 5. Oh, still resists. No, it does. It's still... Oh no. It still resists. You recalcitrant puzzle. Oh. Oh, hang on. I was looking at this too, whether or not you could say anything about where you've got 1. I'm not sure. I need to get more of the parity sorted out, don't I? And that's what I need to focus on. How do I fix whether... How do I fix whether these cells are blue, especially these two? It would be very nice to know what the parity is on those. I'm not sure I know how to prove it though. Oh, I just wonder. Is there another way of proving that this is a 2? So rather than focusing on the fact that it could have the same parity as this square, what else could it be if it's not a 2? Yes, this is very good. If that is a 5, for example, in fact, if it's anything other than a 2, the column breaks, because this square is now clearly not the same parity as a number greater than it further along the column. So these have different parity. This square is saying, let's put a colour on it, let's put a colour on that one. This is saying there's 5 purples exactly in the whole column. This is saying there are at least 6 reds in the column. Now 5 plus 6 is 11, that's too many. So actually, we can prove this is a 2, because it has to be. That's now a 5, that's a 2. Come on, 2, 5. 5, no. 5 must go here, look. Oh, yeah, look, this is a 2. So we know the 2 must be the blue. That's a blue. This is a green. This green must come out. This green must come out. This one now must be blue because there are 2 green cells to the right of it. And come on now. Now, hang on a minute. If that's blue, that must break. If that's blue, because we've already got the 2 blues here. It breaks because, look, these 3 turn green because obviously we've got the blues in the column, so these 3 have to be green now. Now, once this 4 is green, these turn green. Okay? Now, this region cannot now connect to a green region, because if it does, the 3s are in the same region, and the 1s actually, but the 3s was what I spotted. So this would have to be blue. And now look, this square needs 4 greens to the left of it. So this has to be green, this has to be green, this has to be green, and I think this region's too big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's far too big. This cannot work. This cannot be a blue 2. So it must be green. Therefore, this must be blue. I must get loads from that, surely. No! I've had 54 minutes. Oh, good Lord. No. Oh, sorry guys. I still don't think I've cracked this. How can a puzzle this intricate hold out this long? How can you... I mean, it's an incredible setting to think that you can delay a puzzle with this much logical content and you can get this much done. I've virtually put numbers in all the arrows and it still is not toppling. Oh lordy, come on. What is it I'm meant to be seeing now? So there's 2 greens only up here. I do apologise as well if I'm missing something really obvious. It's very possible. There's a lot going on in this puzzle. I mean, things like that can be a 1, but I'm not sure things like that are very... I mean, it's important obviously that I fill that 1 in the end, but it's not really doing anything. Oh, that 4. That 4 is what I was missing. Look, this is a blue 4. And therefore all those have to turn. They're all blue. This has to be green to avoid a 2x2. This is opposite parity to that. That turns green. Surely that cracks it, does it? Now in this box, look, I need 6, 7 and 8 in those 3 squares. I don't believe it. Five, look, these 5s force a 5 into one of those 2 positions. Oh, now, hang on a moment. I might have something. I'm looking at the parity of this 2. I'm just wondering if we can prove that it must be... It looks like it's green, doesn't it? Because it looks like this is going to be a green 4, that will be green, and that will be green, and we will be okay. So is it possible that this is blue? Now, if this is blue... Yeah, it gets really cramped, because if this... We now know there's 5 greens in the column. And we know there must therefore be 4 blues in the column. But this cell is saying it only sees 2 blues in that space. So both of those squares would be blue. And that breaks. That breaks the puzzle because this 2 is now broken. Now, because we've now got 2 blues in row 8, so everything else has to be green. And why is that a problem? Well, once this turns green, those have to turn green because they're part of a 4-cell tetromino, all of the same colour because of the 3 clue. And look at this 5. This 5 cannot orthogonally connect to the rest of the water. So that does not work. This square is green. And therefore that square's green, because otherwise the 4 clue is wrong. So that's green. That's blue. That must be blue. Otherwise, if it's green, it's part of the same region as a 4. So we could have 4 repeated in the green region. Now this must be green because it's, and this must be green to avoid 2x2 regions. No. Oh, bobbins. Oh, yes, no, it is good. I was trying to see how I could disconnect this region, and I can now with the 1. If this region is green, there's a 1 repeated in the green region. That has to be... Oh, look now. This is blue and that's green, and the green has to get out. That square... I don't know. Oh, yeah, I do know. Maybe I do know because of the 3 clue. No, I don't know. Ah! No. don't believe it. Surely that, I'm sure there is a way, I'm just not seeing it. I feel like I'm punch drunk at the moment from this puzzle. Now here's something in, oh no, that's fine. I can have the blue, if this was blue, that's okay, because obviously blue can share a digit. Oh no, but no, this row is forced now because of the one clue, and once this turns blue, the rest of this row must be green. And now this can't be green, because if it's green, it connects a 1 to another 1. So this is in fact blue, therefore that's green. Slowly, I'm managing to solve it. I know it's taking a long time, but I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying this. This is just absolutely brilliant. Right, so I've now done very well. Oh yeah, look, this column now, I've got 2 greens, so the rest of it turns blue. That must be green, therefore that's lovely, because that forces 2 greens above it in order to fulfill the 2 clue. Sorry about this, I just need to stare again. Those 2 squares, look, what have they got to be? They've got to be 2 and 7, I think. That's the 2 here resolves it. That's probably been sitting there for a while, so that's a 7. Oh, and that's lovely. This white 2 gets resolved for its colour because it can't connect to a 2 region, so that must be a blue 2. And yeah, and now I need a 3rd green along here, and it must be that one. So this green, look, gives a 7. That can't be a 7, otherwise it's part of the same region. There must be a 7 by Sudoku in one of those 2 squares. Therefore, there must be a 7 in one of those 2 squares. Therefore, that's a 7. Actually, we could have got it from there. Look, that must be a 9 to complete the box. These 2 squares have got to be 6 and 8. We've got the 6 up there. And finally, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of traction on this puzzle. 7s are nice. Look, 7s are locked into one of those 2 squares. Now that means that square's got to be a 7. This square's not a 7 now. The 7 must go here in this box. Oh, lovely, look, that 7 sees that square, so that can't be a 7 now. The 7 shifts upwards. So 7 in this box must go here by Sudoku. And that 7 is in the same region as this 7, so that's forced to be a 7, that's forced to be a 7. Well, you wouldn't credit it. So these 2 squares are 8 and 9 now. 1 hour, 5 minutes. Oh, goodness. I hope you forgive me, guys. We don't do videos this long very often, and it does always seem to be for the most incredible puzzles. Now that's got to be a 2. That's been sitting there for a while. That's got to be a 6, I think. So there's a 6 in one of those 2 cells. This has got to be an 8 or a 9. I can see that's going to give me a nice 8-9 pair in column 3. This must be a 5 and a 6 to complete the column. Still haven't figured out all the parity, look. This has got to be 6, 8 or 9. This has got to be 6, 8 or 9. That 2 has been forced. I think I've been a bit remiss on the 2s. Still don't know what colour it is. So these are 6, 8 and 9 as well. And that one therefore has to be 8 because of the 6, 9 in the column. So this forms a 6, 9 pair. That gives us an 8 at the top, a 9 here, an 8 here, a 9 here, an 8 here. Surely it must just topple over now. I don't believe this. It doesn't, you know, because we've got 4s and 3s here that are sort of sharing these squares. The 3 here, we don't know which is the other green one. Ah, now, hang on though, this 4 clue. That 4 clue, I've got 1, 2, 3 greens. If I make that green, these 2 have to be blue. And they can't be, because that creates a 2 by 2 blue region. Holy moly. So, sorry, redo that. This has to be blue. And now, this needs a 3rd green square. That's the last green square to satisfy the 4. That turns blue. Just be careful with the mouse here because it sort of turns squares green. I don't believe it. It's still not done. Oh, it is. This square is now, this clue is fulfilled, which turns that green. That must fulfill this clue. So these 2 both have to be blue. This must connect to its friends. It's green. 5, 6 pair in the green. That can't be another 5. The 5 goes here. That fixes the 5 and the 6. Oh, please, please be right. 6, 8, 9 here. This 6. That 6 shifts the 6 out of those squares and into this square, which fixes a 6, 8 at the bottom. It's still working, I think. That's now got to be a 9. That fixes the 9 and the 6. Please, please don't make a mistake. This is an 8, 8, 9. That looks like a 9. I filled in the grid. Yes! Oh! Wow, what a puzzle that is. That is one of the hardest puzzles I've ever done on the channel. Constantly difficult. I'm sure there were many moments where I was slow there. And I apologise, guys, if you found it frustrating. I did my very best for you, I promise. And we'll be back later with another edition of... I mean, before I say that, though, let me just say, Matyas, that is an absolute work of art. I loved that puzzle. Wow. And now I need to go and have a rest. See you soon on Cracking the Cryptic.